Welcome to Talk Heathen. Despite not being convinced of the existence of any god, we hope that someone out there has the proof we've been searching for. Who knows? It might just be you when you call in to today's episode. So take off your royal coronation frock and put on your theist hat, because the show is coming right now. Today is Sunday, May the 7th, 2023, and I am your host, Richard Gilliver, and joining me today is ObjectivelyDan. Dan, how are you, sir?
I'm doing great, Richard Gilliver. I'm here with you. It's a very cozy day, I guess. We're just like chilling here in the most uncomfortable background I've used yet on this program. So, but it should be a great show. I'm looking forward to it.
See, you say you're uncomfortable, but we're in a nice warm mattress with a nice warm duvet. I'm quite comfortable here.
Audio listeners will be confused, but we do use green screens for every show that we do. So this is a green screen behind us and not, in fact, a comfortable bed by which we are both laying on together. So just for the fan fiction writers at home, this isn't canon. That's all.
Smashing the illusion, Dan. Smashing the illusion.
Yeah. Well, I got to be that guy. So sorry about that.
Talk Heathen is a product of the Atheist Community of Austin, a 501c3 non-profit organization dedicated to the promotion of atheism, critical thinking, secular humanism, and the separation of religion and government. It is a live call-in show, and we have open lines, so get your calls in at 512-991-9242 or from your computer at tiny.cc/callth. Of course, every week we have Question of the Week. Talk Heathen to me, no less. So before we get started, we want to give you last week's results of Talk Heathen to me. Last week, we asked you, what is a little-known reason God sends people to hell? Number 3 was Polly Pockets. What is a little-known reason God sends people to hell? There's a special place in hell for people who write, "You're an idiot, YOUR," in comment sections on social media. Dan, what's your opinion on that one?
I like that. First of all, this person's name is Polly Pockets, which is awesome. And I like how they're commenting about specific places in hell in which people should go to because of their lack of grammar. But like, what if like English isn't their first language or something? You know, there has to be some sort of tiered system there. That's all I'm saying, you know.
A tiered system indeed. I like that. Yeah. Number 2 is Christine C. Blocking a parking space or scratching someone's car because one is too lazy to return their shopping cart. Definitely a reason for hell for those people.
It's true. Like if you think about people's ability to be compassionate to each other, a shopping cart is the greatest example because it's absolutely no cost to you. Make maybe extra 5-10 seconds of your time, and like that should be the arbiter by which you're a good person or not, is if you put your shopping cart up. So I'm all right with that.
Absolutely. Number 1 is avert a love. A little known reason God sends people to hell: pouring milk in a bowl and then pouring the cereal in.
I object to this. Okay. I say don't knock it until you try it. Okay. The cereal tastes different when you do that. I'm not saying I do that every time. I'm just saying you got to mix it. It's about the spice of life, Richard. You got to mix things up every once in a while. You know?
It is not something I have tried. I've always put my cereal first. Maybe I'll have to tempt Satan to send me to hell by doing that. Next week's question is, name an unconventional way to test God. So you can enter your best answer below the video in the comments, and next week we will reveal the top 3 answers. But I want to ask Dan, name an unconventional way to test God.
I mean, I think this is obvious. I think God should send out a press release, you know, and just saying like, hey, I'm here. You know what I mean? Like there's always going to be people that don't follow him, but at least we get the question of, hey, I exist though. Like there should be a press release, you know, and maybe a conference as well, press conference. All the major news publications are there. They get to ask him a few questions, where he's been at, you know, what's he doing? And that'd be good to go. But yeah, I want a press conference. That's
yeah. I'm liking the press conference. I think the press release is a bit. We've got social media these days. We don't need a press release, but a press conference. Get everybody in there, all the reporters, and and select people from academia and things and give them the best shot with the questions. I'm digging that.
I think that'd be good. But yeah, that's my take.
I'm looking forward to seeing what the audience comes up with for that one in the comment section. Give us your best answers and tune in next week when we reveal our top 3. So we're going to take a call. We're going to jump straight in. We're going to take a call, and we have got Mike, him, from Canada, who is an atheist and wants to talk about prophecy he learned when he was a Christian, because it seems that it's coming true now. Mike, what have you got for us?
In all likelihood, it's a great coincidence, but it does leave you a little freaked out. Do you want me to get into the details of it?
Yeah, and you're crackling just a little bit on your phone, so make sure you're keeping it still, or you're in a place with a good connection, and that'd be great. But yeah, please jump right in.
All right, that's a little better, by the way.
That was actually worse. So whatever you just did, don't do that. But it's a work in progress.
All right.
How
about this?
If you're on speaker, you shouldn't be on speaker. But we can still hear you.
I'm on my computer. That's the problem. But in any event, I'll jump to it. It's the whole Daniel thing of the dreaming of Babylon, the dream that Nebuchadnezzar had, and how Medo-Persia conquered Babylon, and then Greece conquered Medo-Persia, and then Rome conquered Greece, and then Rome got destroyed into 10 different sections, just like the 10 toes. And then we were always taught, like I was learning back in 1990, about how one day there's going to be a Christian revolution, and starting with America, and it's going to push Christianity, but a perverted form of Christianity, onto the people. And when you see things like the Supreme Court having this, pushing all this stuff on it, it feels like it's actually coming true. Freaky.
I mean,
and that's only in 1990.
Yeah, well, I mean, the thing is, right, there are, 7 billion people, 8 billion people now on Earth. Most of them are having dreams every night, right? Statistically speaking, somebody's going to have a dream that's going to match up with reality at some point, right? Like, just because the odds are people dream sometimes about similar themes, similar worries, anxieties, and also just like the things that they're seeing in real life. So I mean, it just doesn't surprise me that somebody having a dream at some point is matching up with what we're seeing today. I don't think it indicates anything supernatural though, right? I mean, I had a dream that, let's see, what was I dreaming last night? I think I was hanging out. I was like a Christian again last night in my dream, and that was weird. Yeah,
I don't mean to interject, but we're talking about Nebuchadnezzar's dream written in the Bible. Not just somebody had a dream,
But Nebuchadnezzar's dream, though, and just to go back on that, Mike, Nebuchadnezzar's dream, I think you can specifically tie into, first of all, it's probably one of those prophecies that's written in retrospect, right? In other words, is written after the events have already taken place. And there's very clear, mostly clear historical allegories that are being taken place. They talk about the tiered system between the bronze nations and these other nations. They're talking about very specific nations and themes that were existing in ancient Babylon, in ancient Middle East, essentially, right? I don't think they had any indication of what was going on today. And if there's any coincidence there, it's exactly that. I think it's just a coincidence,
Mike, can I just jump in really quickly and ask you if it's specifically Nebuchadnezzar's dream you're talking about? Because you seem to kind of say Nebuchadnezzar's dream to start with, and then you said about prophecies that had been made in the 1990s.
Yeah.
So which one is it that we're dealing with? Are we dealing with the 1990s claim or the Nebuchadnezzar claim?
Well, no. What I didn't fill you in on is that I used to be a very, very hardcore Christian. For university, I entered the ministry to be a pastor. And that was around 1990, and that was the reason why I brought that up.
Right. Okay.
The dream is you got to understand in most of these Protestant Christian eschatologies, the dream of Daniel along with Revelation coincide.
But yes, I know, and I think they're wrong. I do. I think they're wrong. I think that they're not related. I think they're talking about different things.
And there's also the problem that Daniel, or parts of Daniel at least, the parts of Daniel detailing the prophecy are thought to be later than the prophecy that was made anyway. So that's a real problem. At best, it's kind of written at the time these events were unfolding. So Daniel's a difficult one because the parts that are earlier and parts that were later, but the parts that deal with the prophecy are thought to be the later parts.
Yeah.
So that's it's quite unremarkable.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yes.
Yeah. This is kind of, if you just kind of go up and do a quick. I don't kind of advocate going and doing your research on Google, but a quick Google search will at least present some information about this to you, and then you can go and do further, more academic reading after that. There's very good scholarly books on this as well. There's a book by Josh Bowen, The Atheist Handbook to the Old Testament, and I think it's in part 2 that deals with Daniel's prophecies, if I remember rightly. And there's some really, really good books out there that kind of go into this stuff and kind of detail that. So it's quite unremarkable that somebody writing at the time that events were unfolding got the events correct. It's no different to somebody reporting today on news events today and getting the kind of facts of those events right. And you wouldn't call that prophecy in any way.
Yeah. You sent me on Josh Bowen. I love that guy. I've been meaning to read that. You're talking about his books on the Old Testament.
Yes.
Yeah.
But you don't even have to look at him. There's other scholars that would.
For so long now.
Yeah,
there are lots of good Old Testament scholars out there, and they don't have to be atheists, the Christian ones as well, because the consensus of scholars, we must separate scholars from apologists.
Yeah.
The consensus of scholars who work in the field professionally have the same kind of conclusions. There are a few that don't, but and there are ongoing arguments about certain features, but certainly Daniel's the kind of aging of Daniel's text is kind of consensus opinion amongst both Christian and atheist scholars.
Yeah, and there's a lot of argument that even says that Nebuchadnezzar, as portrayed in the book of Daniel, isn't even actually referring to Nebuchadnezzar, that's just a later attribution. Because if you look at, for example, like the book of Jeremiah, which also talks about Nebuchadnezzar, there's like very different characterizations of what's going on there. So like there's a lot of debate of even who they're talking about in these books. But yeah,
I think ultimately what I needed was a swift kick in the ass. I've been an atheist for at least 15 years now, and I cannot see myself ever believing again. But this whole thing was just a little disturbing. I think I said, okay, maybe coincidence, maybe bullshit. And no, what you guys are saying is probably true, but I think what's a really, really good idea is to read a book like Josh Bowen's on the Old Testament and get familiarized with everything the way it really is, rather than the way it was bestowed upon you in ministry.
Honestly, I will always suggest you read books, but like even on, the Wikipedia articles on a lot of these will tell you like what current scholarship says on the dating and, a brief summary of what the people of the time would have interpreted a lot of these to be. And if you do that for like most books of the Bible, you'll realize, oh, this is different from what I'm taught in church, right? I definitely had a difference there. Like there's a lot of people that say, oh, the book of Daniel is actually, it's prophesying Jesus and stuff. And there's still apologists that make that argument. But there's lots of arguments that don't line up with that. So yeah, scholarship is good. They don't really talk about scholarship in church, funnily enough. I wonder why. But yeah, something to think about. So there you go, Mike. Do you have anything else you need from us?
We've lost Mike.
We lost him.
We've lost him. Yeah.
Oh, that's too bad.
Yeah, but I appreciate the call, Mike, and absolutely. Yeah. If you're unsure about something, give us a call and ask us, and get those opinions, because we want conversations and we want good, honest conversations, and we're not going to kind of throw you a line to present an opinion. We'll just talk about what we think is true.
Yeah.
And apply scholarship to that if we have that ability to do so. And there are lots and lots of good Old Testament scholars that you can go and check out and kind of do this. And as Dan says, just a quick search, quick Wikipedia will present you with a lot of those people.
Yeah.
You can support the Talk Heathen and the ACA, and you can do so by going to our merch store. And this month is special because we're bringing back the top 3 designs as rated by the fans for the month of May only. If you missed out on getting one of those before, here's your chance to get them. But hurry, there's only till the end of the month. You can even get 10% off your purchase by using the code FAVORITE at checkout. Visit tiny.cc/merchaca to get them now. Please like the video and subscribe to the channel. Enable notifications, comment below on your favorite caller. Become a channel member, click the join button below the video. You'll get custom chat emotes and you will help perpetuate the mention and talk Heathen and the Atheist Community of Austin. Send a super chat with a question or comment and we will read as many as we can.
It's beautiful.
So you can support us on Patreon, tiny.cc, Patreon.th. We've got a channel that houses all of the shows on the ACA in audio podcast form. Visit tiny.cc/AEN podcasts. You can become a part of the Talk Heathen community in our fan room Facebook page at tiny.cc FBTHG. And also, in case you didn't know, Talk Heathen has a TikTok, and we will be going live there before the shows on a Sunday. So go and subscribe and join the pre-show at Talk Heathen TikTok. And we've done that today. And if you're joining us from there, very welcome. Thank you for joining us. We are going to take another call. We are going to take Sven. And Sven wants to talk about all metaphysical beliefs intellectually dishonest. Sven, how are you?
Hi, I'm doing well. How are you, Richard and Dan?
Doing
Very
pretty
well,
good.
thank you.
Doing pretty good. How can we help?
Awesome. Yeah. So it just, I'm pretty sure, Richard, you know which Sven this is. Dan, I haven't caught an introduction on it for a while, but I'm still a big fan. But recently, a few weeks ago, I had someone in the atheist community say that all their conversations with me, I was one of the most intellectually dishonest interlocutors they've had. And I just feel like you and I, both of you and I have always had good conversations. So I just wondered, is there a point where it comes to just the clash where any metaphysical belief is going to be deemed as intellectually dishonest to the materialist?
I mean, I'd like to know what you mean by materialist to begin with,
Sure,
because
yeah.
I think that kind of that phrase itself has so much different connotations to it depending on who you're talking to, and you're talking to 2 different people here who might have different opinions to the other people you've been talking to.
I
So
also think,
what do you think materialism is, and then you know, we can answer whether that applies to us or not.
Well, I would just say like naturalism, the opposite of dualism. So like a mono, you know, there is only the physical, and the opposite of that.
Yeah, well, so I mean, I
Dualism.
believe you were calling in about metaphysics.
I don't think that's the term.
Yeah, no, so like,
Yes,
so
but all dualist theories are metaphysical theories.
See, and that, so, you know, metaphysics gets very complicated very fast, right? I don't think you have to particularly ascribe, I don't think your position on materialism or even your position on, you know, like dualism, I'm assuming you mean like Cartesian dualism, like actually has to matter what you think about metaphysics, right? I think you can either believe in a strong or weaker form of like metaphysics in the sense of like, you know, the biggest debate in metaphysics obviously is, you know, verifiability, right, of claims, and also just exactly what metaphysics even means, right? So that, because that word has been historically very fraught and has meant different things for different philosophers at different times. But if you're interested in like, do I believe things exist outside of the natural? Because like that gets asked us often. I mean, like I haven't, you know, seen evidence of it, and I'm not sure what even evidence of it would be. So in that sense, yeah, I would call myself a naturalist, but I don't know, like your metaphysics could still be weird on that. I guess I don't know what my metaphysics position is, but broadly speaking, I think most metaphysics claims don't really amount to much, if I'm being honest. But again, that's a wide spectrum of philosophy there. So yeah, I'd be interested in hearing more about your thoughts.
Sven.
You want my specific thoughts on I guess all on what you said. Yeah, I agree. Metaphysics is a broad term, and I guess even naturalism could be categorized as a metaphysical stance. So I guess any dualist stance, like I would say, almost all theologies have in common that there is a spirit separate from the physical. And so, do you think that's like what the leading cause of the rift is? It's just the naturalists will never see a way for people to describe consciousness as like spirit.
Could we separate just
dishonest?
Sven, just before Dan jumps in, do you think it'd be helpful for the purpose of this conversation to separate kind of metaphysical, kind of let's call metaphysical supernatural?
Yeah, because I think that's what you're getting at, Sven.
Let's say there is non-physical, which is abstract, which a naturalist would believe in, things like mathematics and things. So we accept abstract concepts, but we don't accept supernatural concepts.
Yeah,
and I think that's an easier. It puts a definitive line, so we're not kind of arguing over the term of metaphysical.
Yeah, is that comfortable for you, Sven?
No, that 100%. Yeah, I can agree with that. I guess you guys would label like a dualist stance as a supernatural stance. Yes. Yeah, I agree, because I said naturalism versus the opposite, which would be supernatural. So yeah, I can concur.
Right. And you start off talking about metaphysics, and again, like I want to emphasize too, like metaphysics doesn't necessarily has anything to do with naturalism, right? So I think there's just a bit of conflation of terms there, right? You can still believe in metaphysical claims and still be a naturalist. Like those inherently don't contradict, right? I think what you're interested in is like the supernatural, like you're talking about like consciousness claims and stuff like that. So like consciousness, right? There are different ideas of consciousness, obviously, right? There are some that propose, well, consciousness is something that isn't a substance, right? And may not even be a process. It's something else like altogether, right? Something else outside of what we can observe in the physical. I know atheists that hold this position, right? That say like consciousness even is a fundamental force within the universe, because without consciousness, there is nothing for the universe to even be observed by. So there's interesting arguments along that line of thought. I think consciousness can be and is explainable by natural phenomena. Now, the problem, of course, is what about the qualia of consciousness? In other words, what about that personal experience? What does it mean for me to be objectively Dan and Richard to be Richard Gilliver? I don't know. I don't know what it's like to be Richard Gilliver. Thomas Nagel has a very famous essay about this. What is it like to be a bat? And that's the part where consciousness gets very tricky, and that we'll still have to figure out. Now, does that mean that it could be supernatural? It could be something beyond physical? Maybe. But I also know that our consciousness is affected by natural phenomena, right? If I get a bar stuck in my head, right, like who I am and how I perceive and interpret the world, like is going to change because my brain has been changed, right? So like there is something intrinsically physical to the phenomenon, which makes me think, okay, maybe all of it is physical, right? Until I'm demonstrated otherwise. And it's just very complex and we just don't fully understand it. So that's kind of my take. I don't think it's necessarily dishonest to say, or it can be dishonest to be a naturalist and say, oh, well, maybe there's something about consciousness to it. I just think it's probably more physical than anything, right? But anyway, I'm talking a lot here. Richard, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm going to jump in just a minute. I'd actually like to hear what Sven's got to say in response to you particularly, and then I'll kind of jump in after that. Sven, would you like to
the emergent property theory? Again, I kind of think that's what you were going with. I just think it's just an emergent phenomenon of the physical world. But I do also lean more towards, if it was a strictly physical phenomenon, I kind of go more with the first example you gave, like Philip Goff and panpsychism. It's just a fundamental part of reality because something has to be there to observe it, or else the phenomenons wouldn't have a label, they wouldn't be happening. So yeah, I respect both of those views.
Yeah. So why would you lean that way then? Because I can think of kind of 7 different theories of consciousness. And there was a great piece of work being done by, and people are gonna, the atheists are gonna call me dirty names for mentioning this foundation, but the Templeton Foundation at the end of 2019, it's a Christian organization, but they were kind of footing a huge push on the consciousness research, and they were getting all sorts of opposing ideas together, and then kind of the dreaded plague came in and kind of stopped all that happening, which was unfortunate. But I think the kind of the consensus of consciousness researchers, whether that's in psychology or neurology or whatever, do think it is an emergent property. And I think people overcomplicate what an emergent property means. And, if I can just kind of simplify it to its very, very basics and then kind of get you to respond to that and see what you think about that. If you imagine a car being stood still and then moving, and the kind of emergent property of that movement being locomotion, all those parts of the car working together, the engine, the petrol, everything coming together, and then locomotion, movement being the result of that. And that's kind of, that's all we mean by emergent consciousness, is an emergent property of the brain. All these physical aspects are working together, which produce this result. Now, we don't know the details of the result. We do not know what the details of consciousness are. There's still so much work in the field to be done. But we do kind of have a good idea, and through lots of different experiments that have been done, that if you kind of alter the physical aspects of the brain, of the nervous system, of the person, then consciousness and who we are appears to change. So it really, really does appear to be a physical aspect, just like if you took a wheel off a car, the way the car moved, the locomotion would change. And, that's it seems kind of overwhelming that is the case. So what makes you think that it might be this other thing, this dualism, this outside aspect coming in?
Personally, a lot of it would be, I think Dan touched on it early, like qualia and just subjective experience, and also existentialism. I think those are three things that do not fit into what I personally would see evolution providing.
Have you looked into the different theories of consciousness?
What's that?
Have you looked into the different theories of consciousness? Just out of...
I love philosophy of mind. Yeah.
I mean, so just to jump in, right? I mean, like, I think, Sven, very serious philosophers have considered panpsychism, right? Matter having a fundamental property that gives consciousness, like that's been under very serious consideration. So, like, I'm not going to entirely rule it out, but like, I guess I share Richard's skepticism in the sense of, like, I feel, one, I do think evolution can possibly account for theories of consciousness, but despite not being able to solve the mind-body problem, right, in spite not being able to account for the qualia, to me that doesn't necessarily lower the probability of consciousness being an emergent property to be a phenomenon like that. And I think it's mostly because some of the stuff that we've been doing, I mean, like, we've been able to create artificial brains, you know what I mean? Like, and I don't mean like in the sense of a computer. I mean, like, there's been stuff that's been done with organic matter, right, that is able to, like, play Tetris and play, Pong with itself, right? Just from cloned human samples and stuff, right? Like, it seems like that can only happen if it's a physical phenomenon, if we're able to take the same organic structures and bring that to be. I don't see why matter in and of itself has to have consciousness as a fundamental property in order for that to happen, because we do see other forms of matter that don't take on that kind of form. So again, it's very complicated, right? Very, very pie in the sky. But that's where I land on it, Sven. And I think you seem like you at least respect that position. So, it's all gravy, baby.
Certainly. Paul, could I get a little advice on, like, how to not appear intellectually dishonest? Because, like, I left, one of the main reasons it was so easy for me to live Christianity was because there were so many logical inconsistencies.
Sure.
So, like, I'm very, very much all about, at least thoroughness and consistency when I'm searching for truth. So any advice on that?
I mean, I think you just have to be. I mean, like Christian, when Christian apologists and not even apologists, right? When the average person is talking about, the kinds of things we're talking about, they're not even going to be using the same terminology, right? They're going to be talking about souls. They're going to be talking about things that we're not even going to be considered valid concepts, because it just doesn't make sense when you do enough reading on the topic to even consider it in that way. And so I don't know. I think as it's one of those things too, where very careful evaluation of your terms is going to be very critical. Like, even when we first started this conversation, we were talking about metaphysics, right? But metaphysics is really its own branch of philosophy that has very little to do with consciousness, right? For the most part, it really addresses other issues. So I think there's always going to be a confusion of terms, especially when you're talking to laymen. And hey, I don't have a philosophy degree, right? I just read shit. You know what I mean? There's always going to be a little bit of confusion there. I think as long as you do your best to try to figure out, how to talk about it as appropriately as you can, I don't know, you're not being dishonest, right? And I think you just got to get that sense from other people,
Yeah, and Sven, you spoke on a couple of occasions on this show, and I've always found it to be an honest interlocutor. And I think for me, the only advice I could give you is, as we did at the beginning of this conversation, just make sure that the terminology you're using is agreed upon by everybody, because the metaphysical is as we discussed at the start of this call, very, very awkward. So, try and simplify it and say, I'm referring to specifically something like a soul versus, consciousness coming from a physical thing like the brain, just to kind of, really dumb it down to make sure that there's going to be no misinterpretation of those terms as best you can. It's an awkward subject, and it's an ongoing field of research. So it's always going to be difficult to talk about. But I've certainly not found you dishonest in any of our previous conversations. I've not found you dishonest during this call. It's just an exploration, and that's fine.
You got the Richard stamp of approval, Sven. So that's all you need, honestly.
Well, that means the world. I appreciate both of you guys' time today.
Yeah, we appreciate you as well, Sven. Thank you very, very much, sir. So we are going to read a super chat out. We have a super chat from Greg Makowski, who very, very kindly send us $4.99 and says, "Thank you for the pillow talk. I don't know what you mean. I don't know what it could be referring to, or what's all that about."
Yeah, I don't know what you mean either. It's not like Richard is now the producer of this show and I'm trying to get special, favors from him or anything. That's not what's happening at all.
To keep that quiet. That's a slap wrist for him at the after the show. Also, make sure to check out the newest episode of the flagship show of the ACA, the Nonprofits, which will air live at 3 p.m. Central Time today at tiny.cc/YTNP. This week is a British and a royal special, so you don't want to miss that one. The ACA wants you, that's you, to know what is going on in our community, and for that we've got an updated website. Head to www.atheist-community.org, where you can learn about the organization itself, its policies, and how you can get involved. And we want to hear from you. We want to know what you liked and what you thought was effective, and more importantly, that you thought we could do better. Especially as hosts, that's something we really like to hear about, the ways we can interact with you in a better way. If you're unhappy with the way we've done that, you can email us at tv@atheist-community.org and let us know. We've got some calls lining up. Dan, is there one you'd particularly like to take?
You're the boss today, Richard, so it's up to you. But I think I don't know, that first one looks pretty good, or that second one maybe that first one.
Okay, let's take Xavier from Florida.
Yeah.
Xavier wants to talk about how is it possible to scientifically prove that God stopped the sun for Israel. Is this falsifiable?
Xavier, you are live on Talk Heathen. What's up? Xavier, you are there. If you can hear us, please say something.
Oh yeah, hello.
Awesome.
Sorry.
What's
Hello.
going on? Hey, we almost put you back in the queue, so you did it just in time, Xavier. What's going on?
Yeah, I'm trying to make sense of that story. Like, it says that God stopped the sun so that Israel could win a battle. Like, just how does that make sense scientifically?
It doesn't make sense scientifically.
But if the sun was to stop, if the sun was to stop, like, wouldn't bad things happen? Unless, there's a supernatural explanation. But even then, the sun stopping, I don't know how you can stop. I don't know.
Yeah. No. So just so folks at home are aware, there is a story, I believe it's in the book of Joshua. I believe it's a story of Joshua, where in order to sort of get more daylight out of a battle that's happening, like this prayer is basically done and the sun has stopped in place for like an extra hour or something like that. I think that's how the story goes, right? And so like a lot of people have talked about what exactly this means, because if you're looking at it from an ancient cosmology, I mean, to me, it seems very clear. They thought the sun was a body that went around the earth, right? And it just stopped in the sky, right? That seems to be the narrative there. Of course, from a modern scientific understanding, like we know that's not how it works. We know the earth revolves around the sun unless you're a flat earther. Like that's just how it is, right? So how does that work? It doesn't work. I think it works under an ancient cosmology. It doesn't work today. I think they're making a story up about something that happened. I just, that's what I think anyway.
Yeah, Xavier, what do you think? First of all, Xavier, do you actually accept the story as it is, that the sun did stop?
If there is a supernatural God, I guess he could make the sun stop and prevent all the bad things from happening, like the rotation of the earth and gravity. If there is a supernatural force behind it, but there's no record in history of like the sun, like a day being super long. I guess it would have been reported all around the world.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like making me doubt like the veracity of the Bible, the inerrancy of the Bible. But there could still be a God.
Yeah, sure.
I think that's brilliant. I think it's great, and you're asking the right questions. Is it reasonable to believe these claims? Is a very, very good route to go down to kind of, investigate these things. Yes. And if you're looking at it and if you're thinking that doesn't really make sense, compared to the history we have, all these other things, asking, is it reasonable to believe this is a very, very good way to go. Mm-hmm. Is it reasonable that somebody, there's a story in a book that says, because don't bear in mind here, let's take off our Christian hat.
Yeah.
And let's put ourselves in a circle. And in this circle is a Muslim, a Buddhist, a Hindu, a Sikh, a Christian. You've got all these different people who've got all these old books with lots and lots of different claims in them. So we take just one of these books at random, which has a claim in it, and it doesn't appear to correspond to anything that we know of in history to corroborate it. Is it reasonable to accept that story as true on that basis?
But like, it doesn't disprove that there's a God, right? They could just be wrong about science it was 3,000 something years ago, but it doesn't disprove that there's a God, right?
Not necessarily. You're right. It doesn't necessarily prove that it's a God, but it does demonstrate at least that the stories that describe the God and describe the history of Israel, really, because that's what most of the Old Testament is, are at least sometimes wrong, right? They're not 100% correct. They are due to suspicion. And this isn't the only one of cosmological significance, by the way. As you know, NASA and other space agencies are able to predict when eclipses happen with extreme accuracy, because we understand, right, the movement and the bodies of the heavens, right? And not only can we predict what happens in the future, but based on the math that we have on these bodies, we can actually look back into the past and know exactly when not exactly, but more or less within a time frame of when eclipses happen. And we can even line that up to when other parts of the Bible claim that eclipses happen, because the Bible says eclipses have happened several times. And for a lot of these cases, they don't match up, right? They say that they happen whenever we don't have the evidence that they do. So there's a couple of different examples of this similar phenomenon. So it does make you, I think, should question the narrative that's being presented here, right? And at least make you question the source material. Because if everything I know about God is supposed to come from the Bible, and we know that the Bible is at least wrong about some stuff, it could be wrong about other stuff. So that's something to think about.
Yeah, and do you think we need to, Xavier, do you think we need to disprove that God exists? Because let's go back to our circle of friends that we've just talked about with all these different beliefs. Before you believe that the God you believe in is the correct one, have you gone and thoroughly investigated all these other belief systems and disproven all of these other gods? Or have you just kind of come to your belief system because it's convinced you? Because I don't see that I don't see that it's necessary to go and disprove something. We don't have to disprove everything to not accept it as true. What we're looking for is good evidence that it is true. We're looking for evidence that it is true in reality.
Yeah.
And if that evidence is not present, we don't need to go to the lengths of trying to disprove something. Because what we're looking for is something that shows that it is true. And if there's nothing there that shows that it is true, what are we left with? Well, we're left with a claim amongst another, how many thousand other different religious claims that we don't have evidence for. And we have no reason to choose that one claim over all those other claims.
So that's evidentialism. Without evidence, why believe it? But isn't the standard default that there is a God? Because humanity, for hundreds of thousands of years, have always believed in gods. So that seems to be the default position.
I'm going to need a citation needed. I don't know about hundreds of thousands of years. Anthropologists have really looked into this question of what did ancient human beings believe, right? And it's hard because outside of 10,000 years ago, there's no actual written language of any people group, right? So we can't actually know exactly what their thoughts and feelings are. We can make assumptions. There seems to be definitely evidence of religious ceremony in groups of people beyond 10,000 years, right? Beyond that, we don't know specifics of whether they mean God, maybe they mean spirits, maybe they mean other kinds of deities. But regardless, okay, let's say that this is true. Let's say that for a long time, human beings have believed that a God is real. So what? I would argue for a long time, humans have believed that the earth is flat or some variation of that. Right? I mean, like there's a lot of beliefs that have gone back through history that we've determined not to be true, right? Just because it's the default position and just because it's very commonly held doesn't necessarily have anything to say about its truth value, right?
Yeah, that's
Sure.
true. I just meant like that would be the default position because science has disproven, several things about religion, but they haven't disproven God. But
Xavier, I want
the default position has to be.
Xavier, you're asking really, really good questions. I really like that you're doing this, but I want to point something out to you that you've done. And this isn't aggressive in any way. It's not having a go at you as a person. I just literally want to point out, and I want you to notice that you have done this, because you've gone from arguing for a specific God, and when it was when the kind of proposition was put forward that we don't have a good reason to believe in one God or another, you've then switched from arguing for a specific God to saying, well, isn't a God belief fundamental to humanity? So what you've kind of done there is you've unconsciously, and I don't think you've done it on purpose at all, but you've unconsciously moved the goalposts of the argument there. because you've gone from saying, I believe in this God, God A, to God A, B, C, D, E, F, and G, etc. could all be true because humanity has an innate belief in God. So what we have to do now is not only demonstrate that a God could be true, but we have to demonstrate that the one you believe in particular is also true.
Yeah.
So you've gone from needing a good reason to believe in the God you believe in to needing a good reason that a God exists at all and that your God is the God that exists above all the other choices. So you've kind of backed yourself into a little bit of a corner from the point of view of having a good reason to believe in what you actually believe in.
That's a tough one. Yeah, because I always used to hear Christians disproving the Quran, like, oh, how could it possible that the moon was split in half? Therefore, Islam isn't true. But I accepted it for a while, but there's things, unscientific things in the Bible too. So, like, I got to use the same standard of reasoning. But I don't know if this story falsifies that there's a God. But, yeah, Richard, that was a good point. I'm just trying to defend the existence of a deity.
Sure. Well, that's going to be a bit tougher.
Once we have an offer.
Yeah, I mean, I would, if you look at stories of the Bible and you can prove that stories of the Bible aren't true, like, you're right? That doesn't necessarily mean that there couldn't be a deity out there, but we can at least look at the qualities of, if there is a deity out there, what they are or aren't, what they can or can't do, or what they're interested or not interested in, right? For example, if I believe there's a God out there and he gives me purple eggs in my house at every hour, well, we can kind of say that's probably not true, right? Because I haven't found any purple eggs in my house since I've been living here. So if there is a God, he doesn't have these kinds of qualities, right? We can look at the natural world and see at least what their interests are and what they have the ability or capability to do. And, when it comes to the Christian God, there's very specific claims about reality that would have to be true if the Christian God was real, and also about what we observe in our interactions with people. The Christians have historically, for example, believed in this concept of the Holy Spirit as something that can be looked at. There's certain effects that can happen and things. Well, at Pentecost, right, there's the speaking in tongues, right? People are able to talk in other languages, things like that. The Holy Spirit is historically said to be able to heal people. That's another thing we can look at, right? Whether a blind man can be able to see just by getting dirt and spit in their eyes, right? It seems like every single specific instance that we can actually verify whether or not the Holy Spirit is interacting with the world or God is interacting with the world in one way or another, we can't seem to prove it. And I think that says something about the Christian God, at least, or really any deity that has any interest in helping people. Because as far as I know, there's been no real proved phenomenon of anybody being healed from anything supernatural whatsoever, right? Only rumors and speculations at best. But for the most part, we go to hospitals and we ask doctors what to do. At least I don't pray to heal myself because I just don't think anything's going to happen, right? So there's other claims that we can look at that can tell us qualities about whether there is a God or not, right?
Okay. So I guess I have a final question.
Sure.
If we don't have more time. So the story of Exodus, they were in the desert for 40 years, but we don't find any evidence of that. And the trip should have taken only 13 days. So, I mean, does that falsify all of Christianity? And is that falsification enough for you to say, okay, there's no hell when I die, so I can approach the God question honestly without the threat of hell?
Doesn't falsify Christianity. Remember that the story and the origins of that is Judaism, right? And Christianity is just an aping of Judaism, right? There is no Christianity without Judaism. So first you really have to look at, does it exonerate Judaism from scrutiny? And, there's people that have explanations for that, but there's also Christians who will say that the stories that you're referencing right now didn't even actually literally happen, that they're just metaphors, right? They're just allegories and parables for us to learn from. So that's like another dimension you have to look at with this. But if we're talking about like, was there a literal exodus that occurred where a people group were wandering in the Middle East for 40 years before reaching their destination? There hasn't been any historical evidence that has suggested that outside of the Bible. In other words, if the Bible was never made, we would never even come up with that idea, basically. But from the natural world, right? Doesn't seem like there's any evidence. But that also doesn't even have anything to do with hell necessarily. Because another fun thing to look into for yourself, Xavier, if you haven't already, hell isn't a Jewish concept. It's not found in Judaism. There's ideas of Sheol. There's ideas of being in presence with God. But the afterlife is a much different subject in Judaism than it is in Christianity. So I would argue that, I mean, that in and of itself is like almost a total fabrication, or at least a later addition to what a people group thought about what would happen in the afterlife. So it doesn't really have anything to do with Exodus in and of itself. It actually has more to do with Christian theology than it does with Jewish theology. So kind of a separate research question. But I think that's all the time that we got here for this call, right, Richard? So if you want to,
I just before we drop you, Xavier, I would recommend you go and look into kind of a bit of Old Testament scholarship, because I think that will kind of give you a reasonable answer to the Exodus thing, and look at how those books came together, and you know, because there were lots of different people groups who believed in lots of different gods in that area, and they kind of shared stories. So, you know, go and do a little bit of looking up of things like that. I do want to talk to you again. You know, listen back to the call, Xavier. Kind of listen to the points we've made. Go and have a look at, you know, things like Old Testament scholarship. Go and have a look at things like skepticism. There's a really good book by Carl Sagan about skepticism called somebody help me out because I forgot the name of it.
you talk about now I can't remember either. Demon Haunted World. You're talking about Demon Haunted World.
A Demon
right?
Haunted World. That's the one.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dan. Yeah. Go and look at A Demon Haunted World by Carl Sagan, and that'll teach you about believing things for good reasons.
Yeah.
And that's vitally important. And I think you're hanging too much on this kind of, I need to disprove it. You don't need to disprove anything. What you need is good reasons to accept that it is true. And that is a very, very different thing. So kind of listen to the call back, go and have a look at a few different areas, and then give us a call back and kind of see where you're going and where you're at once you've kind of had a look at those things, Xavier. I'm going to let you go. I do appreciate your call. I like that call a lot, Dan. What do you think about that one?
No, it's good. Xavier is a theist, but he's asking us our take on stuff. One, that's admirable to be able to do that. Not everybody can do that. But two, he's obviously questioning things, right? He wants to know our takes, and he's trying to look for, as you mentioned, good ways of doing skepticism. And it's always important to point out, like, yes, certain things in the Bible could not be true, and there could be a God. Like, a lot of atheists have trouble with that. Like when I bring that up, they think I'm defending theism, and I'm not necessarily defending theism. I'm just looking at the logistics behind this, right? Like, people can write things about God, and then, I can write things about you, Richard. And just because the things I wrote about you aren't true, that doesn't mean you don't exist. You know what I mean? It's absolutely. You have to consider it under that light, you know?
Yeah. We've got another super chat from James Cole, who's been a member for 6 months. Thank you, James. $5. A special place in hell is for people that buy from breeders or puppy mills instead of adopting from shelters. Got the best dog.
I agree with that. I agree with that 100%.
I don't think you're going to have any argument from either myself or Dan on that point.
Yeah.
And if you happen to be in the Austin area, Austin, I can't speak.
Austin.
If you have, I'll start again. Let's scrap that. If you happen to be in the Austin area on May the 28th, 2023, we will be broadcasting live from the Free Thoughts Library. Join us for Talk Heathen, hosted by Forrest Valkai and Sophia Spiner. Sophia auditioned for the open calls and did a fantastic job, and we are so excited for her appearance. The Atheist Experience will be hosted by Forrest Valkai and Jim Barrows, and doors will open at noon, and we hope to see you there. Parking is limited, so if you're going to pop down, please do take parking into consideration. I'm going to shout out the top 5 patrons as well before we take the next call. Dan, would you like to do the honors, sir? Have you got the list?
Oh, yeah, I can do that. We got the top 5 patrons today. Number 1, Dingleberry Jackson. Number 2, Ayame. Number 3, Oops, all singularity. Number 4, Davor Valjean. Number 5, Kalevi Helvetti. And honorable mention goes to Gabriel Guerrera. Thank you guys so much for donating. I like, by the way, that Richard was like, okay, scrap that. We'll do this again, as if this isn't a live broadcast and not, a recording that we're doing in our basement somewhere or something.
Yeah.
It's great. It's awesome.
And I'm the producer. So
yeah, that's right. We're not joking about that. Richard is new producer for Talk Heathen. So congratulations to you on that, Richard. How do you feel? Do you feel powerful?
I feel like I've got all the power. I feel
great.
Like
I've got some ideas I want to pitch you. I got some ideas I want to pitch you on some new series. What if we did a true crime thing? Everybody's into true crime, but then we just talk about it as atheists, and that's the angle. What do you think? That's it. That's the only difference.
Yeah,
maybe a new show.
Okay. As long as we can wear long trench coats, so weird.
Okay.
So it's authentic.
I got like a list of 20 other ideas, so you let me know, and I can pitch a few to you.
We'll talk about it. We'll talk about it. I'm going to Dan. Do you want to pick the next call?
I will pick the next caller. Let's talk to Muji. Let's talk to Muji, who's calling from Europe. Want to do that?
Yeah, go on then. Let's talk to Muji. Muji, are you with us? Muji,
you're live on Talk Heathen. What's going on?
Hello.
Hello. Do you hear me? Yes.
Yes, we can hear you. Thank you.
Yeah, very good. Yes, thank you. I would like to say I'm a former atheist that I converted to Islam, and I didn't convert to Islam because God exists. I converted to Islam because I realized that Islam has fixed the problems we had in the past, and it's going to fix our problems that we have today and in the future as well. But I would like to say, if God doesn't, or the religion doesn't, solve our problems anymore, or cannot solve our problems anymore, then I believe myself that no, we don't need God or religion. But because I see that we have a lot of problems in the world, and I believe that the only way out of all our problems is Islam. That's why I have converted to Islam. For example, Islam has solved problems in the past, like Arab Bedouins were burying their daughters alive, and Islam forbid it and stopped it. So there are many other problems that religion, Abrahamic religion especially, solved. So what do you think that if a religion can solve our problems that we face today, like prostitution, drugs, poverty, war, and all these problems, that we cannot solve them ourselves? If a religion can solve them, or God can solve them, shouldn't we follow that religion or the God that says that follow me, I will guide you to the right path?
I think religion can solve people's problems. Hot take. I do. I think it can give you a sense of life purpose. I think it can give you a sense of community. I think it can give you a sense of place in the world, right? Like I do think it can solve a lot of these things, but that's separate from the question of whether or not it's true, right? I could be part of an MLM, and an MLM may give me, some financial prospects for a little bit, or maybe it gives me some connections, or maybe helps me in some part of my career. But that doesn't take away from the fact that it's a predatory scheme that doesn't help a lot of other people, right? It may work for me, may not work for others. So like that kind of, this idea that Islam solves all world problems, I think is a bit naive. I don't think it does. And I also think it's separate from the question of whether or not the claims of Islam are true. So that's my initial take. Yeah.
Yes, actually, I think that rationality says that, for example, I don't believe that Buddha was God, or I don't think even followers of Buddha believe that he was God. But Buddha has some good teachings, so if I see them that they are nice, so I don't think that I should say, no, I'm not going to follow because he wasn't God or he wasn't prophet of God. I would follow that, or even a politician who says that I can, change the economy or fix the economy of the country. I don't see any problem to vote for that, politician. So I don't see any problem that I shouldn't follow, for example, Islam, for example, just because I don't believe God exists, or I don't believe that Prophet Muhammad was really prophet of God. So that, of course, comes next, that if really Islam can solve all problems, which I can explain for you, and you can, we can discuss about that.
Before we do that,
Yes.
let's take it one thing at a time. Richard, you look like you wanted to say something.
Yeah, I'm interested in Mujay. I've got one very, very simple question for you. Do you care about what is true?
Okay, what do you mean? What is true? That God exists or doesn't exist? You mean?
What can be? Do you care about what can be demonstrated as true or likely true? Are you happy to believe something that you do not know is true because it facilitates something that you think that works? It might look like it works. It might look like it can solve problems, but you don't know whether it's actually true or not. You have no belief that it is true. Is it enough for you that it appears to have a function, or would you like to know whether it's actually true or not?
All right. Okay, I understand now your question. But if I know that in fact that it works, okay, if I believe that it works and it's going to solve all of our problems, then why shouldn't I believe when I know that it is going? It is a fact, which you haven't even asked me why I believe that it's going to solve all our problems on this planet. So if you asked me that, and we were discussing that what is the solution?
Well, I'd kind of like an answer to the question I've asked first. I'm happy to go down that route, but I have just asked you a question, and I'd like that particular question answered, because it makes a difference. It makes a lot of difference, because if you're just happy to follow something because if it's functionality and you don't care whether or not it is true, that can lead some people, and I'm not saying this would be the case with you, but it could lead some people to do bad things for the wrong reasons. So let's kind of just answer that question straight off. It's a simple yes or no question. Do you care about what is true or likely true?
Okay, I do care, exactly. And I think that it should be, everybody should care that what I believe in is true or is false. Yeah.
Okay.
Definitely.
So that's going to be a problem. That's going to be a problem for us, because you could be right in that if everyone believed in Islam, the world would be a better place. But that doesn't change the fact that I don't believe, for example, Muhammad rode on a flying horse to the moon, or that Muhammad spoke to the angel of Gabriel and received direct knowledge of God, right? Those are specific historical claims that I can't accept as true, and is really going to affect how I believe in the rest of the stuff. You know what I mean? Because look, I could say, and I bring this up too. I talked about this on Friday, but like David Koresh from, the Waco massacre probably brought a lot of good things to the people that live there. I mean, there's a reason why so many people live with him. There may have been some stability. There may have been some opportunities for them to live out a life purpose. But I would argue that was really bad for them in the end. It may have given them the illusion of some comfort, but David Koresh was not the Messiah. I think both of you would agree with that. If unless you think otherwise, but I think most people would agree with that. So again, there's going to be differences in how we accept other claims versus if we understand, parts of the religion to be false, right?
All right. I have to say about as well. Previous caller said that the Quran says the moon was split, but it is not the case at all. Or Prophet Muhammad fly on a horse? No, it is not. These are just fabricated stories in the hadiths. Quran doesn't say that at all. Okay, and I don't believe that myself. Anyway, I just yes. I just would like to say
but so sorry to interrupt you, Muji. You do believe? Do you believe that Muhammad got divine inspiration from God?
Yes, I believe that.
Okay,
definitely.
So that's still a big one, right? Like that's still going to be a holdup. It doesn't have to be about flying horses over Jerusalem, but it could be something we have a problem with, you know.
Yes. But I would like to actually, I want to spread the message of love, equality, and peace. That's why I'm trying to, make people to, even we have disagreements, but we can unite to solve our problems, common problems. Or fight our common enemies as well. Okay,
that's an interesting. I'm so sorry to interrupt you again, Muji. That's an interesting prospect.
Yeah, no problem.
Because I want to fight for peace too. I want to fight for equality. Yeah. I want to fight for all those things. I'm not a Muslim, right? So like,
no problem.
we can also do these things without being Muslim, right? Like what? Yeah. Why do you have to be a Muslim? Why do you have to believe in Islam in order to solve these issues?
All right. Okay. So because I believe that the source of all problems we are facing on this planet is the capitalist system. Okay. And because everything happens in this world is because of this system. People want to sell drugs because they want to become rich. People produce tobacco and kill 5 million people because they want to become billionaires. People produce weapons and they create war, conflicts here, there because they want to sell their weapons. So all problems, according to Islam, all problems comes from the capitalist system. And Islam says that get rid of the system, live equal. That's the Islamic message. But if you follow, if you agree with me that the source of all problems is this satanic system, okay, the capitalist system, and we have to live equal in an equal world, and we have to share everything with each other, love one another. I promise you that Islam has no problem with you being atheist, and you will, if you fight.
Muji, I'm having some difficulty with some of the things you're saying. First and foremost, the moon being split in two is not in the Quran, because it is. And it is also in the Hadith. It's in Sahih Bukhari, volume 5, book 58, number 208. It is in the Hadith, but it's also in Surah 54:1 of the Quran. So it is in the Quran.
Sorry, I have to interrupt you. It is, first of all, it's not Sahih Bukhari. It is Trash Bukhari because it has a lot of fabricated hadiths in his book, okay? And all extremist Muslims, they block me because I'm trying to prove them that they are wrong. These Bukhari.
Okay, so let me just interrupt you. Okay, Muji, I need to interrupt you here now because this has taken a whole turn I did not expect it to take.
Yeah.
So
this is awesome though.
So we what we've got here now is a case that it is in Bukhari and it is in the Quran itself. But you disagree with other Muslims who think that that's the case. Now, without I don't wish this to sound rude in any way. I don't particularly care that you disagree with other Muslims. Take that up with other Muslims. You've called an atheist call-in show. If you want to talk to other Muslims, call a Muslim call-in show and discuss it with them. But I can tell you absolutely that it is in Bukhari, and I can tell you absolutely that it is in the Quran. So it is there. So I've kind of got a problem with you telling us that it isn't in the Quran. I've also got you've kind of gone down this line of, Islam says this and Islam says that and Islam says the other. But you've given us no reference to any of those things. And, not everybody is as familiar with the Quran as I am from an atheist perspective. And I'm not sure what Dan's kind of knowledge of the Quran is, but I kind of do this stuff. This is what I do at university. I do religion, philosophy, and ethics. That's what my degree's in. So I kind of look at different religions, and I enjoy doing so a lot. And I do a lot of independent research into that as well in my spare time because I am a boring tit. But look, there's also something else you said, because I'm just going to throw all these things at you because you've got me on a roll now. And you said that, Islam has no problem with atheists being atheists. And that I've also got a bit of a problem with that, because although I agree that many atheists take kind of some of the verses of the Quran out of context, and I think they do, especially the verses about kind of, people who don't believe in things. I think they are taken out of context in a lot of cases. But the word for a non-believer in Arabic is kufr, or other words that are kind of derivative of that, the same root. And they mean specifically those who have read and understood the message and rejected it. So it's not just a case of people who don't believe. It is a specific term, which means people who have rejected that. And Islam absolutely has a problem with that. The Quran tells us explicitly that the kufr they will be judged by God in the hereafter. And it's not going to be a happy judgment. They're not going to be given candles and cakes and a little party. No, sir, either not. So although some of the interpretations given by atheists are a little bit, from my perspective, a little bit out there, I think some of the stuff you've said is outright, and I'm going to be rude because I think you deserve it on this occasion. Outright nonsense. And I think what we need to take from this call is that, you go away with your kind of with your Islamic friends, and you gather around in a little circle, and you sort out all your little beliefs between yourself. And when you've decided which is the correct interpretation amongst yourselves, give us another call back, because I really don't see this being very productive moving forward. I'd like to hear from you again, Muji. I'm going to let you go at the minute. I appreciate the call, but I think you need to decide amongst yourselves what you believe before you come and tell us what kind of moving forward we need to do, Dan.
Well, first of all, I want to get on because Muji was talking, I just typed in the chat here. He's like Muhammad Marx over here. You know what I mean? He's on that anti-capitalist Islam, and I'm interested. Okay, I want to see what he's got. But I mean, I don't know. Is it fair though to say that everybody has to have? Because first of all, I agree with you in that the problem is if you say Islam is gonna save the world, it's gonna solve all the problems, but we can't even agree what the fuck Islam is, then yeah, that's an issue, which is notorious amongst religious groups. But to be fair, I mean, there is a lot of philosophy groups, a lot of scientists that don't agree on a lot of things either, and yet we still get some stuff done. Now, granted, the way that those claims are evaluated are, of course, much different. But I don't know. If he has a specific ideology that says, hey, this is going to be the one, and he happens to call it Islam, I think that's fine. I just think that, we have to take in mind that Islam is going to be different from other people's Islam. So
yeah. Look, I have no problem with people, Christians or Buddhists and Muslims all have a vast array of different beliefs, and I have no problem with any of that. I think when you're directly contradicting what's actually written in the text, I think that's where I'm going to that's where you get my backup. I read a lot of these texts.
I want to know though, was Muhammad anti-capitalist? Because that's a new take. That's fresh, dude. I don't know about that. I'm a white guy from Texas, dude. I don't know about that. I'm just saying that could be.
Yeah, if you're a Muslim, give us a call and you know the answer to that question. Do give us a call and let us know,
dude. I want to know.
Shall we take someone else? Shall we take Alex from California? I'm looking forward to Alex.
Yeah, go ahead. Let's do it.
Hello, guys. Thank you for.
Hi, Alex. How are you?
Hey, we're doing great.
doing well.
How
How
can
are
we
you?
help you? Good. What's going on?
Okay, so I have a question. I'm curious to know if there's a goal, whether it's subconscious or intentional, for trying to persuade people to atheism.
Yeah, good question.
So maybe
Yeah.
Absolutely, and I think we may have different answers. I don't know.
Yeah, I think we
So
would,
Dan,
but-
you go first.
Okay, yeah. So like what are we doing here, right? What are shows like Talk Heathen about? What's our purpose? Are we trying to turn people into atheists? Maybe. I think what we share in commonality is we are interested in evaluating claims, and we are persuaded by the idea that many claims that happen to be religious in nature are not true and can be demonstrably false, or at least be arguably false, if not demonstrably, right? So does that mean a worldview of atheism? Possibly. I don't, I'm a part of the Atheist Community of Austin myself. I like to use the term atheist for myself, which is, slightly in the nuance different from atheism. But, the point is, I think what we share in common is that we see a lot of bullshit in the world, and we do want to challenge that. There are a lot of people in the community, even on like the Discord server, if you go to, who aren't atheists, but still watch this show and who hang out with us because they find, like-mindedness in our spirit and in what we're trying to accomplish. But am I trying to convince people that atheism is true? I think it's more correct to say that I would like to convince people that most claims in Christianity, Islam, other world religions are false. I think that is more direct to what I'm personally interested in, because atheism may not be quote unquote true, depending on how you define that, right? Like it may not be the case that there are no gods in a classical term of atheism, right? It may just be that we don't have good enough evidence to believe that there are any, which is like a very nuanced but different point of view. But that's my take. Richard, what do you think?
I've got lots of religious friends.
Yeah.
I've said this a million times before. The guy who was the best man at my wedding is a Muslim. I've got lots of Christian friends. I have no interest whatsoever in persuading those people away from what they believe. That's not my place. What I want to do is to engage with those who want to engage. This is why I am on a call-in show and I'm not going knocking door to door.
Yeah.
People who want to engage with us come in, I'll open the door and I'll have those conversations. And I want to give people tools as best as I can to kind of assess the claims that they're making about the world. And sometimes those claims might be perfectly valid. And sometimes those claims might not have anything to substantiate them. And as I said on a call earlier tonight, the thing for me is it's all about having good reasons to believe that what you believe is actually true. I have no problem with the idea that a theist is convinced that what they believe is true.
Yeah.
I accept that wholeheartedly. It's not about their belief to me. It's about whether their belief has any justification, and giving them the tools to kind of assess that and think about that and talk about that. And it's, for me personally, it's not about trying to dissuade anybody at all from their faith, from their religion. I think in a lot of cases when we have these conversations, that happens. And I think it happens as a byproduct of having these conversations and having better tools. There are biblical scholars who started off as Christian and who went into, college and university and things, and literally as Christians wanting to strengthen their faith, and they came out atheists or agnostics on the other end because of the methodologies that we use in kind of studying these things. And they realized that, not a lot of it actually makes sense when compared to what they were taught growing up. And, I spoke to a Muslim very recently, who was doing the same degree as I am, who kind of, came in as a Muslim, and they didn't express doubt, but what they said was, and I found this really, really interesting after we'd been talking about Islam, and they said, I did not know that. I did not know half of the stuff I've just learned, and I've been a lifelong Muslim. And it's just, opening, yourself to methodology, opening yourself to the way you ask questions, to the way you look at the world, and to the way you ask questions. And I think it's very, very important, as I mentioned earlier on, to kind of separate an apologist from a scholar, because a scholar will follow the evidence to where it leads, and an apologist will start with a conclusion and look for evidence to back up that conclusion. And that is a vital difference. And I've been talking a long time. Alex, please respond to both myself and Dan.
So I think those are fair responses, and it sounds pretty in line with my my understanding of most atheists. It's an intellectual perspective. So my second question is, would you consider it a victory or not? Or I guess, what would you consider it if, after having intellectual conversation with somebody, that person was moved toward Christianity or religion in general? But let's go with Christianity.
It's interesting.
After debate with you, after discussion, the tools that you were talking about, if that person said, I have more justification for Christianity than for atheism, what would that, how would that affect you?
Yeah, I think what it comes down to is methodologies. I'm way more interested in methodologies than I am in atheism. And to be fair, I think the exact scenario that you described could actually happen. I legitimately think you can have a conversation with someone like us and say, I realized my method for believing that, say, Christianity was true was wrong, and I found a different method which can support or otherwise ameliorate my beliefs towards something that I believe to be more true. That's absolutely fine if it's a better method of knowing things, right? If, say, for example, somebody said, I think God talked to me once when I was 10, and I had a conversation with them and say, hey, that may not actually be the case. And they're like, oh, okay, well, I actually think of God because I've studied Thomas Aquinas and I've looked at like natural theology, and I'm convinced on the arguments put forth by like natural theology that there is more likely a God than not a God. I would say, okay, yeah, there's some critical thinking that's being involved more so. And like, it sucks that they're more of a Christian? Well, here's at the end of the day, what I care more about is it going to affect my life? Is it going to affect my civil liberties? Is it going to affect the way that I navigate in the world? I mean, to be honest, I wouldn't be interested in doing anything with the Atheist Community of Austin at all if folks like Christians, if folks like Muslims, if folks that believe in sort of part of a religious superpower don't daily affect our government and affect how the world exists. I mean, we're primarily an organization that's interested in the separation of church and state. I mean, like, that is one of the core reasons why we do what we do, but also because like that's personally why I am going to do stuff in the world. If beliefs didn't matter, if beliefs didn't affect anything, then it's whatever, but they do. So if they're more convinced to be a Christian, but their Christianity is different, if their Christianity is like, oh, I'm more of a Christian now, but actually I think gay people are okay and they're not going to go to hell. I mean, like, that's a victory in my eyes. I guess I care more about the quality of people's lives than anything in that sense. So yeah, it's a complicated but very good question, Alex.
Yeah, I agree with Dan. It is an excellent question. It's one of the best ones I think I've heard on this show from a theist, to be honest with you. My position is this: if somebody, after talking to me, let's say they're an agnostic and then they become a theist, I'm not going to look at that as a loss as such. I care more about, as Dan said, I care more about the quality of their beliefs. And I think in a lot of cases, You can get let's name and shame. You can get people like William Lane Craig.
Damn,
who
Richard. Damn, Richard is on an anti-apologist streak today. Somebody's got to stop this man.
I'm always
right?
on an anti-apologist
I know,
streak.
but like you're hot, dude. You're coming in hot today. He's name dropping. Anyway,
let's choose William Lane Craig for example, who has said that the Kalam cosmological argument, in its original form, is the best argument for God he has heard. And then, when he's been in conversations where it's been shown to have flaws in it, he's then gone on to modify that argument to kind of reinvigorate his conclusion that God exists. But then, in conversations after that, you hear him say, the Kalam cosmological argument in its original form is the best argument that I have ever heard. Now, we know that's not true because you've already gone and modified your version of the Kalam, because we know that the original form of it cannot be substantiated. So in that case, we know we're dealing with somebody who's blatantly dishonest. And in that case, if that person said, I'm an agnostic, and then I've become a Christian, I really wouldn't care. I wouldn't kind of view it in any way other than that person is blatantly dishonest. If it's a man in the street, if it's a friend of mine who's agnostic and becomes Christian, I care more then, and I care more about the quality of how that belief is kind of influencing the way they live their life. I talked earlier about my friend who became a Muslim. He was a great guy before he was a Muslim. He's a great guy as a Muslim. That belief hasn't influenced the way he interacts with the world, the way he interacts with people, or anything like that. It still remains a great, great guy. And in that case, I'm less bothered. It has less impact on me because it's not affecting the world around him. It's not influencing the way he votes. It's not influencing the kind of how he interacts with gay people. It's, and he's the same guy he was before now as he was before. He just happens to have taken on these extra beliefs. And I think it has to be done in a kind of an individual basis. And it's a nuanced question. It's a very, very good question. And I appreciate it, Alex.
Yep. It's very good.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Am I allowed to say more, or am I?
Of course.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. Because what you just said, if I can, before my mind loses track of what I wanted to say, you were saying, hang on a second, repeat the last thing you said, if you don't mind.
The last.
Sorry.
Okay, go on.
My brain does this. I'm sorry. I lose track easily. So, if someone converted to Christianity, you wouldn't be bothered by that. But I think that's where conflict arises, because by converting to something like Christianity, it requires change. It automatically leads to change in that person's life, and then change with how that person interacts with the world. So
why does it though? I've literally just given you an example of a friend of mine who converted to Islam who didn't change after converting.
Then what does he convert to? If he didn't change, then is it a true conversion?
Well, what's a true conversion? I think that presupposes that a God actually exists and that there is only one way to kind of truly convert to this God.
Okay, so I'll focus on Christianity because I'm not familiar enough with Islam. And my thought is, if you convert to Christianity, then now you realize that you have to change because you live in sin. We all live in sin. And if we sin against God, then we're separated from God. We accept that Jesus Christ is Lord and Savior. That means you automatically start becoming, or not automatically, you steadily become more and more Christ-like. That's the whole point of becoming a Christian. So you will naturally change over time. Your views will become different. And many people go to some extremes, and they do things that might be well intentioned, but poorly executed, maybe in bad taste, like hating. You're not supposed to hate people. We all know God says you're to love your neighbor. So our change should be from a hateful heart to a loving heart. And our change should be to a prayerful life. So you're going to see that change in your friend who converts to Christianity. You're going to see him want to go to church more, to want to serve more, to care about the things that God cares about, and to dislike the things God dislikes. So if you have none of those changes, then it's not a true conversion. And I'm wondering, does that still bother you if you have someone who doesn't change after converting? Then it would be just empty.
I mean, I think for me personally, it feels like there's a lot of projection going on here, and you're kind of instilling that, you know, someone has to change. You're taking a particular case rather than talking about people converting in general. And, you know, so if that's the case, I'm happy to talk about that particular case. I'm less happy to say this is what happens when somebody converts, because I don't think that's the case in all cases. You know, there are very probably cases where people convert to Christianity and become much worse people. You know, and obviously I said that kind of as a blanket statement, but that's exactly what you're doing. You're making a blanket statement. So let's take an example of person A who converts to Christianity and becomes a better person. And in that case, you know, I have no problem with that. If it makes them more comfortable, as long as they're not impacting on other people's lives in a negative way, I don't see any problem with that whatsoever. Dan.
Yeah, I mean, I'm reflecting on this, but like, I might disagree with you, Richard, in the sense that I think that well here's where I put it, right? Beliefs do matter, and Alex is bringing up a good point, right? Like you know, the problem when talking about beliefs, I'm more interested in like the methodology of the beliefs and sometimes than the belief itself. That's not always true. I am interested in the beliefs themselves sometimes more, but the methodology is really what I'm primarily interested in, because Christianity, for example, is a religion where you can have the Westboro Baptist Church in one corner and you can have an Anglican church with a gay pastor in another, right? And they still call themselves Christians. Both of them do, right? So it's kind of hard to talk about Christianity, for example, in a vacuum, as you mentioned, right? I think people's prejudices and people's methodologies by which they understand the world do affect public policy, do affect your interactions with other people. And yes, that is influenced by religion, but sometimes, again, it's just the methods. Sometimes if you just look at the methods of how they're examining things, how they know some things are true or not true, that can almost just be a defeater within itself. Has nothing necessarily to do with Christianity. Because again, there are scientists who are Christian that I'm sure publish great work. I'm sure there are lots of people that do more work for the homeless than I do, certainly, and are very Christian in their beliefs. So yeah, sometimes in some cases the belief does matter, but then again, it doesn't. Sometimes it's more just about your personal convictions and how you actualize that. You know, some people actualize that within the understanding of a religious framework, that they're doing something for God, and that their absolution of sin is more so about you know, the works that you do in this world and the good things that you do for this people, rather than a focus being on, you know, everybody is a sinner and we all need to go to hell. Now, there's some Christians that do feel that way, and that's very toxic, and I don't want them to feel that way. But I tend to find that the people who more critically examine their beliefs tend to go the first way and not the second way. You know what I mean? I trust more the liberal scholars on this that have really examined their beliefs tend to become more, you know, liberal in their attitudes and understanding of Christianity rather than the other way around. Now, that again, that's an assumption that doesn't always happen, but anecdotally and what I've seen, I mean, that it seems to be the case. So you know, what I'm here because I want to look at people's reasons why they believe, what they believe, and why. You know, that's what I'm about. But you know, we are a coalition of people with different interests. So, and we talk a lot. That's the other thing we have in common. So, anyway, Alex, any thoughts?
Well, there was a lot said there,
Yeah.
so I can't respond to all of it. Both
Of course.
said something in common. you are okay with someone converting to Christianity or just a religion in general if that person doesn't do bad things to people and only does good things to people. So as long as that the way that person interacts with community is positive. So
it's more of a tiered system, I would argue, Alex, just to clarify, right? Ideally, they don't believe in things that are not true, right? Or that I could perceive as true. I don't know everything, so, whatever, right? But like, if I'm going to have a Christian who, again, is a part of the Westboro Baptist Church versus a Christian who is a part of that other church, then yeah, I want the Christian that's part of the other church, because Christianity is going to exist for the rest of my life. It's not going to go away. So, if I have a choice in the matter, I'd rather influence it in one direction or the other. So that's my clarification on that.
Yeah, I kind of agree with Dan on that caveat as well.
Yeah.
But ultimately, you guys would prefer Christianity not affect a person's life. The person can claim the title of Christian, but not behave like an actual Christian.
Well, how would you behave as an actual Christian? Because that's such a vacuous term.
Yeah.
Even if we just take Christians themselves, I mentioned on an earlier call, I must have said that about 500 times today. I mentioned on an earlier call about, the kind of Muslim guy going and fighting it out with other Muslims. You don't have a Christianity.
Yeah.
In religious studies, what we say is we have Christianities, because there are so many different ways to interpret it. And you can't say that there is no yardstick. There is no yardstick that is independent, that you can place in the ground and say, this is true Christianity. This is not. This is maybe half true, because we just have lots of different interpretations of Christianity. So you can't say that somebody is a true Christian. It's very, very difficult to do that. So, we're kind of on shaky ground here, I think, a little bit with the way your argument's going.
Yeah. I mean, there are literal Christians who say, I don't believe in a literal God. I'm just inspired by the works of Jesus. And that, inspires me to do work for my nonprofit. Like, that person exists. Like, and that's fine, honestly. Like, they don't believe in a literal God. So we have that in common. And also, they are inspired by this thing. Again, I may not be inspired by them, but that's why they call themselves Christians. They are inspired by the works of Jesus. And I think that's a fine way to call yourself a Christian. So that's why it's hard to say, is it better or worse if somebody becomes a Christian? It just depends. It really does. Because as Richard said, there's just no one Christianity.
That's curious, because you guys are saying it's difficult to identify what Christianity really is. And I disagree with that. I think it's quite simple to see what Christianity is, because if you just line up with the Bible how someone behaves, then
how do you line up with the Bible with how someone behaves? If let's say God is the arbiter of how people behave and gives the instructions of how people behave, where in the Bible can we determine, either through his instructions or through his actions, where do we determine what is right behavior?
Are you asking me?
Yes, I'm asking you. Where in the Bible do we determine what is right behavior if we say that God is the arbiter of right behavior through either his instructions or his actions?
It's all throughout the Bible. Instructions are everywhere. The 10 Commandments are the first set of instructions.
Okay.
And then,
so, Alex, listen, we are going to have to wrap. We are coming on up against a hard stop against the end of the show. Please call back, because I want you to go away and think about that question specifically. I don't just want an all throughout the Bible answer. I want you to kind of go away, have a think about it, and show me where in the Bible, either through his actions or his instructions, God gives a direction for the way we should behave. I am going to let you go. I do appreciate the call. I really, really do. It's been a great call, and you've given us a great question to answer that both neither me or Dan have heard before, and I do appreciate that. But I do want you to call back, and let's continue that conversation. I really do want to continue the next time I'm on, please. So we have come up against kind of a hard stop.
Mhm.
Have you ever said to yourself, because I have, I really love the content the ACA creates, but I wish there was a way I could get it all the time? Well, then we've got you covered. Check out our brand new 24/7 AXP TV live stream. You can tune in any time of the day to experience a constant stream of shows, clips, and specials over the 26 seasons of the Atheist Experience. A constant stream of shows, clips, and specials. I've already said that part. Watch or simply listen to your favorite hosts and discover some hosts you've never heard of. Visit tiny.cc/AXPTV to join in the fun. And don't be a producer like me who can't even speak. Don't forget, we've got a question. We want this week's question of the week. Name an unconventional way to test God. Reply in the comments and tune in the beginning of next week's episode to hear the top 3 answers. So you can like the video, subscribe to the channel, become a member, click the join button below the video, support us on Patreon at tiny.cc/patreonth. We've now got a channel that houses all of the shows on the ACA in audio podcast form. Visit tiny.cc/AEN podcasts. You can become a part of the Talk Heathen community in our fan-run Facebook page at tiny.cc/FBTHG. And if you would like to continue the discussion after the show, join us in ACD, our fan-run Discord server at tiny.cc/ACD Discord. I will be in Discord after the show if you'd like to continue the conversation. Also, make sure to check out the newest version of the ACA show, The Non-Profits, which will air live at 3 p.m. Central today at tiny.cc/YTNP. Before we go, let's go and have a look at our wonderful crew, because they are amazing. They make this all happen, and they're the ones who are going to shout at me afterwards for falling over my words. And let's send out, as always, some love rings. Thank you to our viewers. We really do appreciate you. And whether you are not, oh God, it's going so well. First show as producer, it's all falling to bits.
Oh, good thing.
Whether or not you believe, if you're an essential worker, we do want to thank you. If you don't believe, this is your community. Whether or not you can speak properly or not, it doesn't matter. You are still welcome to be part of the community. If you do believe, we don't hate you.
We're just not convinced. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Richard.
We want the truth, so watch Truth Wanted live, Friday at 7 p.m. Central. Visit tiny.cc/YTTW and call into the show at 512-991-9242 or connect to the show online at tiny.cc/calltw.